It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Oh man, it's my favorite part of the week. I love this segment. Welcome back to Feel Good Breakfast Show Express on SABC3 Baby Talk Time with our friend in babies, Meg Faure. And of course, the question we're asking is your toddler a notoriously picky eater? Well, fear not, because you are definitely not alone out there. So on today's Baby Talk, occupational therapist and co-author of Weaning Sense, Meg Faure, helps us to figure out how to prevent fussy eating and how to manage a young baby who does not eat properly. So I was saying to Meg earlier on, just before we started, that I was of the understanding that babies will eat whatever you put in front of them if you just leave it there for long enough. And apparently that's not the case.
Definitely
Maybe
not.
because we haven't moved to solids yet, so maybe that's not the case. But why are they so picky?
Well, toddlers in particular are so picky because they're too busy to sit still for long enough. That's
Okay.
why you can't just leave the food in front of them, because they want to get going, and sitting for a meal can be frustrating for them.
True. Okay.
In addition to that, toddlers are starting to assert themselves, and they assert themselves in any arena that they can, and they push boundaries, and sleep and feeding are the two big ones. So just because you want them to eat something is exactly why they won't eat it. So that's what a toddler mindset does.
Okay, but what's happening in their mind when you say assert themselves? Why do they feel they need to assert themselves? Like when you say, eat the broccoli, and he goes, no. Why? Why does that happen?
So it's actually a very important stage of development. It's the stage where toddlers develop what's called autonomy or doubt. And autonomy that's what we want our children to develop, our
Yes.
toddlers. And that's having a good sense of myself, that I have an opinion and I can assert it.
Okay.
And that's why toddlers can be very tricky, because they really will push back on everything. You want them in the car seat, they'll say no. You want them to eat the broccoli, they'll say no, because they're asserting themselves. It's an important stage.
I figure my red trick is going to say, I'm going to say to him, well, you're either going to eat that broccoli or you're going to wait for it to grow another broccoli and then you have to eat two. Do you see what I mean? Anyway, what are the most common eating issues that you see in your practice?
So quite commonly in the toddler years, refusal to eat.
Yeah.
And often with toddlers and even older children, they get stuck on what we call the whites, which are processed food, which
Okay.
is dairy, processed carbohydrates, fried food, and they all have that kind of white colour.
Yes.
And they resist things like proteins that have strong colours, brown and so on, and then they protest against green, and so they get really stuck on the whites. And that's quite classic, and so parents can end up being very frustrated because all they'll eat is yogurt
Yeah.
and bread.
Yes.
So that's one of the typical ones that happen. With little babies, they often get stuck on textures. They don't want to advance from very smooth food onto more textured food. So that's also a very typical
just
stage
like when
we see.
it's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
it's new in the mouth.
Exactly, and they
kind of
gag.
thing.
So often they're gagging, and as they hit 6 or 7 months, and so mums get quite nervous to actually move them onto more textured food, and they end up on very smooth, jarred baby food.
Okay. So is there something that you can do as a parent to prevent your baby from being a fussy eater? I don't know if it's an old wives' tale, but for instance, if mom eats a lot of watermelon during pregnancy, is the baby automatically going to love the taste of watermelon, broccoli, or
Yeah, we
what you have?
definitely see babies being primed for certain flavors through pregnancy. So, for an example, if you eat very spicy food, or if you live in Thailand and are eating all of the wonderful Thai flavors, you actually are more likely to have a baby who accepts those flavors
Okay.
later. And so one of the things we do say for moms who are pregnant is go for it. Eat wide variety of flavors. Please don't cut out food when you're pregnant, which a lot of moms actually do.
Yes.
Unless, of course, you're allergic to it, then you have to. But rather go for a wide variety of flavors, even your really strong chili flavors, because it does prime your baby for actually wanting to eat stronger flavors later. So definitely in pregnancy you can do that. And the second thing you can do to prevent fussy eating is introduce solids in a window period where babies are accepting new things, and that's between about 4 and 6 months of age. We used to say introduce solids much later, and we found that the later you introduce it, the more picky babies are, because they're going into that stage where new is kind of something that they doubt.
Yeah.
And so rather do it when they're younger, because they're more ready to accept a wider variety of flavors and textures.
Okay. I have a question that I want to ask, and the question is because, for instance, we want to try and breastfeed for as long as possible. And when you introduce solids, the balance of food now changes because the baby will need to breastfeed less because solids are now filling the tummy. So can you wait until like the very, very end of the 5th month into the 6th month and it'll be okay? Hold on to that thought for a second. We're going to come back. More baby talk with Meg Faure shortly.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
welcome back. It's baby talk time on your Feel Good Breakfast show. Meg Faure is here. We're talking about fussy eaters, how to help your little one to not be so fussy, because apparently they just all have that automatic setting that they are. Pinky's on the line right now from Pretoria. Good morning, Pinky.
How are you, Kakao?
I'm very, very well. How are you?
I'm good. You know what, Kakao? I have a 1-year-old baby girl.
A 1-year-old?
Now, every time I try to feed her vegetables or vomit. I would like to ask you, Doctor, what I can do to help me to more vegetables.
Okay, the line is breaking a little bit, but if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying you have a 1-year-old, whenever he eats vegetables, he vomits. Is that what you're saying, Pinky?
Yes.
Okay, good. And veggies are green. We want your little one to eat as many veggies as possible. What could be the problem here, Meg?
Okay, so a couple of things. If he's actually vomiting after any food that he's eaten, I would get him checked out for allergies. So some veggies are very unlikely to cause allergies, but
Yeah.
if it's a proper vomit after a baby of 1 year old,
Projectile.
yeah, proper vomit after they've eaten, and particularly if everything else is coming up, then you do need to check for allergies.
Okay.
But it could be that she's talking about gagging, which is where he takes it in a little bit, gags, and then like kind of does a gag and then a vomit.
Yes.
So a couple of things about that. I mean, I think that this is one of the reasons why we want textures introduced early, because otherwise they do become sensitive to textures.
Okay.
So what I would be doing if I were her is to, what could be happening is that she's offering him veggies that are mushed. And often mushed veggies that have been kind of mashed together have got smooth sections and then lumpy sections.
True.
And so the baby's kind of anticipating smooth, but then he gets a lump, and that's what makes him gag.
Okay, all
So
right.
quite a good idea with these little ones is to actually have a plate of food that is whole food, so she can steam the veggies and leave them whole. So like a big piece of broccoli, a big piece of cauliflower, and then let him chew on that. Because when he sees a food that looks like the shape it's going to taste like, he kind of takes it in and he sucks it, anticipates it, and is less likely to gag. The other thing is that if little ones are gagging but not going on and vomiting, then try and ignore it, because lots of little ones kind of do this gag, wait for your reaction, and you've got to kind of ignore it because they're not going to choke.
Yeah,
And they're not going to
yeah.
vomit. They're just gagging.
And they learn pretty quickly.
do.
Phoenix already knows if he goes, we know he's going to cry. So you go,
A
So,
reaction.
yeah, that reaction. Yeah. And you said this introduction of whole foods, steamed, let's say vegetables, if you're looking to go the healthy way, you can do as early on as 7 months.
Yes, yeah. So we were chatting about what's called baby-led weaning. It's kind of a trend where babies are introduced whole steamed food from 7 months on, which is when they can hold a piece and actually get it to their mouth. And a lot of people kind of freak out and say like whole food when they're that little. But actually, babies really enjoy eating that way. Think about how many things babies actually take to their mouths anyway, like rattles and toys.
Blankets.
And blankets. And so they can do this with food and let themselves actually experiment with food. So what I like to do, and it's actually one of the best ways to avoid picky eating in young babies,
Yes.
is to have what's called the 2-bowl approach. So you have your bowl that's got the mush and kind of all the nutrients that you want to get in.
Yes.
And then that same food that's in your bowl, you leave some of it whole, so you don't actually mush it up and blend it.
Okay.
And you put that on your baby's bowl. So they've got a bowl in front of them with whole food, and you've got a bowl in front of you with mushed food.
Okay.
And so you can kind of shovel in between while they're also having fun of actually holding, experimenting, getting it to their mouth, and actually starting to eat whole food.
Okay, all right. What would you say for nervous parents who go, I know I'm supposed to be introducing solids by 4 months, some experts believe, but I'm too nervous because I still want to breastfeed my baby for as long as possible, so I don't want my breast milk production to dry up because now they're getting more food, whole foods. So the dynamic between breastfeeding and feeding changes.
It's a very important question. The first things moms have to know is that milk is the primary food for babies until 6 months of age. So it really is very important, and preferably breast milk, because it contains all these wonderful nutrients. So it will always remain the priority. So even if you are introducing solids earlier than 6 months, you need to make sure that you protect the appetite for milk. And the way that we do that is offer a milk feed ahead of a solid feed, so
Okay.
that they're not ravenously hungry when they're engaging with solids. And
Yes.
in that way, the solid feed becomes just an experiment.
Okay.
Kind of just a bit of an exposure to solids, but your priority remains milk until
right.
6 months, for sure.
Okay. Oh, so much more that we could talk about, but always appreciate your time and expertise. You are amazing to talk to every single time. Yeah, I feel like I've just gone through masterclass and I'm ready. Phoenix, we're doing solids today. Broccoli for you, my boy. Broccoli for you. Thank you very much, Meg.
Pleasure, Claire.